Thank you for tuning into our podcast, Canal Days, What Life Was Like in the Industrial Connecticut River Valley of Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining us today is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Como. He offers and leads public and private tours, as well as presentations of historical sites within communities throughout Massachusetts. Currently, the communities he will be focusing on this year are Holyoke, Chicopee, South Hadley, and East Hampton, as well as Granby and Amherst as well. And his tours spotlight on local canals, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets and selected historical houses within each community. Today's episode we will be discussing Essex Street, located in Holyoke, Massachusetts. And in general, what is Essex Street like?
Essex Street is one of the east-west streets of Holyoke. It's one of the shorter ones because it doesn't go past any of the canals. And it's between Cabot Street and Appleton Street, which are very long streets and with a lot of structures in them. What we're going to talk about today includes that something very important happened at Essex Street. It became the 14th entry on the National Register of the United States for Historic Places as the East Street Historic District. And we'll talk about that. Plus, we'll talk about the Maplewood, which is also in that historic district. I'm sorry, on the National Register, but not in that particular historic district. And we'll talk about how it compares and how it's changed through the years. But in general, Essex Street is alongside the Holyoke Public Library. It also goes very residential towards the west, and towards the east, it stops at Commercial Street, so it doesn't see any of the mills around it, although it does come up very close to the Farapaka Mill number 3.
And tell us about the Essex Street Historic District.
That was formed in the year 2023 as the 14th entry on the National Register within Holyoke, and as the 6th entry of a district within Holyoke. And it includes on the eastern edge, the structures that were just built by wayfinders, including the former Providence School of Nursing, the Carlson and the Randolph, and then the connection between the two. And as it goes up in that historic district, it includes a beautiful house that used to belong to Daniel Newton, a very rich contractor that lived in Holyoke 150 years ago. And beyond that, and included the Prentice House, which is now gone. And beyond that, more beautiful buildings down Pine Street, Walnut Street itself. There's a set of row houses that are also in the district. And then as you go up further and further, it has some nice buildings. So it's well deserved to have this quaint little part of a street in the National Register Historic District.
And quickly, before we continue with our interview, just to fill our listeners in, for more information, or if you want to sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there you can find videos and podcasts of the stops along each tour, as well as photos and text of the historical sites as well. And for private tours and other inquiries, you can email him directly at bobcat4214B@yahoo.com. And his tours make for fun, educational outdoor activities for families and group parties. So getting back to our interview, tell us about Maplewood.
Right, the Maplewood home was a home that Arthur Bibbe made for himself and his friends in order to have a residential location, a hotel, and a restaurant, all in this one building at the corner of Essex and Maple Street. And he was the son of the founder of the Baby Holbrook paper mill and the Baby woolen mill. So there was a lot of money out there, and he used it very wisely. He lived in Springfield, but he wanted a place for himself in Holyoke, and he also wanted to help out his friends that might need a space to live. And so we got a very unique looking building, a very interesting turret to it. And if you look around, the structure is very well segmented, and I hear it's very well taken care of inside. So it's a nice little thing, and it's part of again of Holyoke's National Register entries. And I always love showing it off. It's very nice to see it across from the Holyoke Library. So you have these wonderful structures all together.
And how does Essex Street compare to other streets in Holyoke?
Well, it is a bit short, but in its residential sections, it's quite unique looking. Towards the east, when it starts to go by the library, it also is very close to the Elks former club, and it was also along the side of what is now the telephone company, but that building was made in a style called Art Deco, and they replaced a very unique looking church called the Unity Church, which is a Unitarian church. And it's different from this downtown segment because it doesn't cross any of the canals, it stops short of that. But it's very similar because it has a lot of nice looking homes. In fact, they're probably nicer than most streets.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours and historical topics of your expertise. And of course, we want to thank our sponsors. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. And check out a large selection of his other podcasts at his website, as well as on SoundCloud.com. And be sure to stay up to date with new podcasts and videos posted daily. Thank you, and hope you join us again.
National Register within Holyoke. And these 14 were 12 for a very long time. But then in the year 2022, the War Memorial Building was added. In the year 2023, the Essex Street Historic District was added. It's the 6 of the 14 that are districts. And what it consists of is you start at the northwest corner of the Library Park, where the Holyoke Public Library is, and you look towards the west up Essex Street. And for 3 blocks, it's now a historic district. It includes the Randolph, the Carlton, and where the former Barlow was, and then the Providence Hospital Nursing School. It includes the Essex across the corner from Essex Street. And then you walk upwards for 3 blocks. It includes all the buildings along the way, including Daniel Newton's home. He was one of the famous Newton brothers. He probably made his own home because he was a contractor. It's an enormous Victorian home. And then as you walk upwards, you get to see a few apartments along the way. Some are very large, and those have been added in. One special one is that on Walnut Street, there's a series of row homes, and they're nice, and they're mostly uniform, and they have a very pleasant look to them. So the whole bit of these row houses, even though they're on Walnut Street, not Essex, they start at the corner with Essex Street. Those row houses are included in this new historic district. And then as you walk up one more block, you meet the end of this new district, and you get to see a couple more Victorian homes. One of them I got to visit the outside very close up 2 years ago. And it was a beautiful Victorian home. And so every entry on here is well worth it because you get to see how people lived back 120 years ago. And you get to see a lot of the original buildings. So along the way in this discussion, we'll talk about what the National Register is and what it means for Holyoke. And we'll tell you some of the key buildings here. And then what should be done in the future to this Essex Street Historic District.
And so tell us about the National Register.
Okay, the National Register is a listing of all historically important buildings in the United States. It's been going since the 1960s, and you could be on for one of 4 reasons. The architecture is very important. The history of the building is very important. Who lived there, a key individual, is very important. Or the potential is very high for learning in the future what was there. And one obvious, that one seems a little vague, but one obvious key is that it's mostly used for Native American burial sites. So in Holyoke, there are now 14 entries in the National Register. 8 of them are individual buildings, are are locations, and 6 of them are districts. And this is the last one put in the year 2023. The first one I ever put in was the Holyoke Canal System. And other ones, I'll name some of the districts. You had the Pulaski Park. You have Veterans Park, which used to be Hamden Park. They're both districts. High Street is a 5-block district. It's now on here. Essex Street is now on here. The Helly Falls Worker Homes is another district. And some of the key location individual buildings are such as City Hall, the Caledonia, the Friedrich Block, and then Wisteriehurst and other buildings. So you can see that Holyoke has some pretty nice entries. In the last 2 years, it's gained a couple more of the War Memorial Building and then this Essex Street Historic District.
So quickly before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there he has both videos of the various stops along each tour, and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you're interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And they are perfect for fun and educational outdoor activities for the whole family, or for your group parties, especially those special occasions and get-togethers. And they are also good just for getting outdoors for the day. So getting back to our interview. What are the key buildings in the Essex Street District?
Okay, it starts towards the east, right at the corner of the Library Park, and there the key buildings are the Randolph and the Carlson, and then it's not including the old Barlow, which was taken down to make a new building there, and that led with walkways over to the other buildings. But it also includes the Providence Hospital Nursing School. It used to be down next to the post office, but in the 1930s they moved it up to Essex Street. And I'm glad that building was saved for the year. Not many locations around Massachusetts will have nursing schools from the past saved. And this one was a little bit over 90 years old. And so it's great that you can save that kind of architectural development. Right? It also includes the Essex building, and my favorite probably is it includes the Daniel Newton House, which is a beautiful home and very important because Daniel Newton was the contractor and builder of the Newton family. He made a lot of the mills around Holyoke, such as the Albion, the Chemical, the Massasoit, the Warrigon, but he also made the middle of 3 of the Holyoke high schools. He also made many buildings around Western Massachusetts, high schools, mills, so forth. It's thought that he built about 200 to 300 buildings around Western Massachusetts during his lifetime. So he was a big-time contractor. And so it's nice to see that he's also still there. Now, I told you somewhat about the Walnut Street row houses. They're very pretty. They're right on each other, so they are true row houses. And they all have the same look to them. And just by seeing that in their original state is quite beautiful to look at. And then you get to look at some really big apartment complexes. You're almost tempted to call them tenement houses, but it's beyond that. They're apartment complexes. And then when you go up further, the Prentice home is gone, just like the Barlow's gone. But as you go up further, there's a couple more Victorian homes that have nice, unique designs to them. And just seeing them, and seeing the complexity and the different looks of these kind of homes as you walk 3 blocks within one street, you get to see how different kinds of people lived, how people that were just workers in mills lived, how people in the middle class lived, and how people in the upper class lived, within 3 blocks of each other. Why is that possible? Remember, there was no cars, and so the owners, the managers, and the workers all live very close to each other and close to their mills. It's another 3 blocks away is the start of the mills. And so everything's right together.
And so, what should be done in the future to the Essex Street Historic District?
I wish that they take this Essex Street Historic District and expand it 1 more block to the east to include the Maplewood Hotel. But more importantly, I wish that they form a historic district centered around Library Commons, which means the library in this park, and make it half block north, south, east, and west from that point, so it includes things like the Presbyterian Church, which is a mock-up of the Richardsonian design. Would include the Lawrence School, and the Sons of Zion Synagogue, the row houses on Maple Street, the ATT building, the Elks building, the Essex, the the Masonic Temple, and of course the library in the middle. If you make that a historic district, then you have touching each other the Essex Street Historic District, and then Library Common Historic District, which is potential, and then the Maplewood Hotel would be touching each other. And they would all be close to, for instance, the High Street Historic District. So you start to have almost lanes where you're not even leaving one historic district before you enter another one. And that would be great for Holyoke with this, because this downtown section is very complete and beautiful looking.
So thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours, and we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can also tune into a large selection of our other podcasts and much more at his website. Again, that's holyokecanaltour.org. And again, you can email him directly for private tours or to inquire about anything else at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And be sure to keep an eye out for his upcoming 2024 season tours and more as they become available. Thank you for tuning in.